We're on.
Happening now. We want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number, I cannot remember, 349 on April 9th, 2025. My name is Jason Neiffer, and I am the Executive Director of Montana Digital Academy, which is Montana State Virtual School located on the beautiful University of Montana campus in fabulous Missoula, Montana. But tonight, I am joining you from the last day of the ASU GSV Summit in lovely San Diego, California. So it's been an exciting two events. The AI show was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and today were the ASU GSV Summit. And so I've been talking to industry leaders and having pickup meetings with EdTech CEOs in hallways and talking to some really interesting folks from foundations. And so happy to join Dr. Fryer tonight because we haven't talked in what feels like forever. So.
Absolutely. Well, this is weird. Hi, I'm Wes Fryer. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am about, I guess, it's about a month left of teaching AP Computer Science, which has been interesting. My regular day job is middle school STEM, and I love what I'm doing. But it is definitely a busy semester, and I'm looking forward to the end of it and the summer. So we have not been online since February the 19th, which is I think this is our longest, break, but there's been a lot of things happening, visits to the emergency room, conferences, all kinds of different things. So, and I'm trying, I was hopeful that I was going to be utilizing a new setup here, and I sort of am, but anyway, if I'm looking weird places, it's because my monitors and cameras and things are in different spots. What are we going to do that we haven't done for almost a full month?
Yeah,
well, more than that. It's almost been 2 months because that was February 19th. Good grief, over a month and a half.
We've been scouring the internet for weeks now, trying to check out some of the evolving news in the technology space, and we try to shoot it through the education prism. And I do have several interesting updates from ASU GSV that I'll share throughout the night, but you can find all the links of the stuff we're going to talk about, and frankly, the stuff we won't get to tonight at edtechsr.com/links. Dr. Fryer, what topics will we be covering tonight? I can't imagine that AI would be in any way, shape, or form a part of this discussion.
I think it will. And actually, our site is temporarily down, so I will be getting that up soon. But if you happen to be here live or on the YouTube, you'll be able to click the Google Doc. We'll put the link to the Google Doc. Well, we have a ton of AI updates, most of which I think you shared there about Google, new and updated models. We have 10 articles. No, more than that. 10 articles there. Other AI related updates, OpenAI specifically, vibe coding. Lawsuit related. Then we've got articles about security, Google, phone ban, social media, free speech and media censorship, Doge, which is basically just an article about the Office of EdTech in Washington closing. And then we have our Geeks of the Week. So what sounds like a great place to start?
Well, I'm sure that all roads lead back to AI right now, but let's do some of the other stuff. Let's start with security. It looks like you picked up some interesting articles.
Yeah. Well, would you believe that I have been using AI to find articles? So I think I may end up creating some, I don't know, there'll be bots or just, static or just prompts that I will be using on a recurring basis for this. Because I was saying, hey, from, in this case, the last 3 to 4 weeks, what are some security articles that would, be interesting to talk about, relate to education, perhaps. So I'm actually in the middle of a cybersecurity unit with my AP computer science principles students, and so we've been doing reports and lots of discussion. This is an article from the Times, so it's from the UK, and the title is "Weekly Cyber Attacks on the UK by pro-Russian and Palestinian hackers." And so it's talking about this is from GCHQ, which I think may be like the CIA of Britain. And so they've had attacks that have been centralized, or they've had a whole bunch of groups that have come together that have been pro-Russian and pro-Palestinian, and these kind of articles are just saying it's a dangerous world out there, folks. But they've got some screenshots from some of the hacks. It does say that the majority of these are rather unsophisticated, distributed denial of service attacks, but they're talking about the need to go ahead and look at critical infrastructure and try to have more coordination between agencies. But of course, this doesn't just rely on government agencies. So much of cybersecurity, as we're talking about in school, has to do with end user devices and how well we're patching things and stuff like that. So it does say that the threats are increasingly complex, and it's calling for some coordination. They have a national cybersecurity center, and basically that the hackers are getting more sophisticated. So this comes on the heels of announcements, here in the United States about some different firings and some sort of stepping down, I think, of some of our cyber efforts. And so anyway, it's one of these. Be careful out there, folks. It's dangerous. We're noting we see a lot of bad things that are happening. But there's an additional article, and this one's probably certainly the more educationally relevant one. This is from the Associated Press on April 9th, and it's titled "Schools Relying on Digital Surveillance Find That Security Still..." That's not the one I wanted. No, they do. It still takes a human touch. This is it. It talks about keylogging every keystroke.
We're still out of practice, Wes.
I know. Can I even talk? Well, this is up from your neck of the woods. So this is in Rigby, Idaho. So not that far. And it's talking about how schools are turning to security systems and surveillance systems to try to help maintain safety and prevent school shootings and other kinds of bad acts of violence. But the overall article is saying that it's going to take individual relationships and human connections, and that people are the solution. But here's what really caught my attention. It said that they are, let me see if I can get the exact quote. Rigby school leaders use technology to detect threats, including an app, Stop It, which allows students to anonymously report safety concerns, and surveillance software that monitors students' keystrokes for troubling terms. So that sounds to me like software that is a keylogger and is logging, every student keystroke, which I don't know how that's working on digital devices. I don't know. I mean, I guess there's software out there to be able to do that kind of surveillance, but that's pretty intrusive. If every keystroke is being monitored. So
yeah, and I would also note too that I mean, AI makes it possible to actually go through that amount of data, and that doesn't make me feel any better about the situation. But I think the bottom line is that there has to be ways to maintain, a reasonable amount of safety without getting involved in this kind of what I would consider to be overwhelming surveillance on students. And I think an argument can be made that safety is paramount, but I think that the bottom line is we're also in this business to teach kids, and it doesn't teach kids anything if we're going to be constantly criticizing every single keystroke, right? And where does that line go between being reasonable about what you're able to mentor students on, and then getting involved in business that schools or teachers should not be in at all in regards to a student and what they're thinking or what they're accessing. So yeah, interesting that's the case, but oof.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm even forgetting to put the links in here. So we'll drop these links in the StreamYard. We have a very large audience here tonight, so I'm sure that anyway. There's one more article relating to digital security, and this one is calling for some multi-factor authentication and probably some things that most schools are doing. I don't know what the survey results would say about the number of schools that implement MFA as a requirement. I know we were doing that back in, 2017. It's been quite a while, but this is an article from the it's not the same one. This is from the Federal News Network, and it's titled "New Federal Threats Demand New Mitigation Technologies." And multi-factor authentication (MFA), like I said, is something we were I think a little early among private schools doing that, to say, hey, all staff and teachers need to use a second factor of authentication. But and I had to actually ask Chat GPT what all of these things mean. But they're talking about basically some like physical security keys and cards. They the acronyms they say is strong MFA, such as hardware tokens and phishing resistant MFA, public key infrastructure (PKI), fast identity online, FIDO passkeys instead of SMS or email challenges. So some of these are, and I have one. I don't know if you use one of these, Jason. On my key ring, I've got a YubiKey, and it has like a Lightning and a USB-C that I log in with. But then I do have these other things turned on as well. And I know if we want to be super secure, like text messaging is not in that category. And so this article is saying that organizations need to, not only enforce MFA, but also look at more secure hardware tokens and tools, I think, that allow people to verify their identity. So that does kind of take it to another level. So any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, we've been requiring a multi-factor authentication for, it was going back well pre-pandemic as well. I do own a YubiKey. I don't. It's not required on any of my accounts, or as the single MFA option. I always worry a little bit about, like, just not carrying the key around, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
at least with a, well, if you're going to leave your phone behind, you're going to leave your key behind, and vice versa. But I do think that's something that probably I'll end up with two at some point. The one exception to that is that when I have a second factor worked into biometrics in my MacBook or my iPhone or iPad, I feel very confident doing passkeys hooked to that, right? But yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous world out there. I think AI makes the threat, a cybersecurity threat, that much more significant. And so, yeah, I think not only should we be implementing these technologies, but absolutely 100% continue to invest in them. And there's certainly some subtle secondary debates on this. For example, I've been in both sides of a discussion before about, we're now requiring X, Y, and Z for work. According to federal law, you can't force employees to buy X, Y, and Z without then allowing them to, because if you're forced to purchase something, but your employer doesn't reimburse you for that, then I think technically you can write that off. And that's something to look into as well. But yeah, we should in some point decide an age where it's appropriate, 14, maybe 16, and say students have to have some kind of second factor authentication as well.
Yeah.
Although I don't want to pay the bill for replacing YubiKeys for freshmen in high school, but other than that, yeah.
If they use their phone as that device, I don't know. But that's what you're saying, that if it's not a provided device, how are you doing on passkeys? Have you fully embraced the passkey thing? And do you have a good way of explaining that? Because is it kind of like it's MFA, but you've put it into an operating system or a program?
Yeah. Okay, so, and I think you and I've talked about this before. I'm surprised. I mean, this gives you maybe the reason why passkeys aren't, exploding in popularity, because if Dr. Fryer and I are struggling to explain it, then that it's a bit on the more complex side. But what a passkey is essentially it's a little. And okay, now my technical explanation might not be very good here, but it's a little encrypted piece of data that is accessible by some kind of security protocol. A good example of this is you can work passkeys into a lot of password managers. So my 1Password, which is my preferred paid for password manager, has 800 passwords on it between all my accounts. And you can set up a passkey to where it will force some kind of second authentication on your computer when you're trying to get in a website that you have an established passkey on that device, and then it will skip the password. So when I go to eBay, for example, I have a passkey on my eBay account. It's hooked to my 1Password. My 1Password, if it's already authenticated, will just pass me through without a password. But if I haven't authenticated into 1Password, it's going to ask me to do that, which just happens to be keyed to my biometrics on my laptop. That is not a very easy or simple to get description of what it is, but essentially it's another pathway of you getting into a website without having to know a specific password for it. It clears you without a password.
I actually asked ChatGPT to explain passkey security in simple terms a sixth grader can understand. So it describes it as a super safe key that a device creates for you, so you don't have to remember your password. But it doesn't actually then pass a password to the website. So I need to find out, because we're talking about symmetric and asymmetric encryption and public and private keys. I'm sure this is I'm not sure, but I'm thinking that this is probably a asymmetric form of password sharing. But they say it's a magic invisible key that only works with your face or fingerprint. Your device keeps it secret and unlocks it. So I guess there's some part of this that is unique in terms of what it's passing. I don't know. I don't completely understand. So I do know that I'm frequently asked about this. I think I do have a passkey with my Apple account, and I think I have one with Google as well. And I think that my 1Password maybe has created one. So anyway, it's unfortunate that it's not a little more simpler to understand. And this is definitely an obstacle for security, because if things aren't simple to understand and people can't articulate them pretty clearly, then oftentimes they don't reach wide adoption. So
Yeah. And and the frank answer is that we need this stuff, right? Like, it doesn't seem like we should need this stuff, but we absolutely do need this stuff. And passwords are a 50-year-old phenomenon. They are nothing new, and they're easily crackable for the kinds of passwords many people use. So the more ways we can get to authenticate pass, the better off we are.
have you been using to jump to AI, but related to this, have you been using the new image and like even info pic creation possibilities
It
with
is stupid good.
it's crazy. I'm gonna just show this real quick, because I just said, hey, make a I guess I'll do entire screen and it'll get wild for a second. Make an entire make a infographic about this, and then boom, there it is, and every word is spelled correctly, and that's relatively simple, and gosh, that's crazy good.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I'll give an example of this. That's I think I have the article somewhere in here. It's about a week and a half old. I'm sorry, it's 2 weeks old. The new ChatGPT 4.0 image generator.
mhm.
But I showed this off on LinkedIn last week. But all I did was, it wasn't even a very good prompt. I just said create an image, and I copy, or I pasted a photo of Washington Grizzly Stadium. That's the stadium at the University of Montana. I copy and pasted my logo, Montana Digital Academy logo,
Yeah.
and I said, take this logo, put it on an airship over the stadium pictured here, right? And it's slow, but 4 minutes later, it came up with a beautiful rendition of an airship with the Montana Digital Academy logo flying over Washington Grizzly Stadium. And that it, the quality is certainly notable. The fact that this was just strapped on to GPT 4.0 is also notable. but the stupid simplicity in which it allows you to take images, and I don't know why my camera is moving around like this, takes images and creates or it gives you the ability to just modify them in a kind of a dramatic way, um without without much ado, is unbelievable, and it's sitting in the free version of ChatGPT now.
Yeah, I had my high school students using it today for our presentations about different cyber attacks. Are you familiar with Ghibli style anime from Japan?
I am now.
Yeah, right. Well, this is an article that I wrote this week, and it's actually some of the articles that it references here. And the whole start of this rabbit hole was you on LinkedIn, but putting in any kind of photograph and then having this Ghibli style animation, it's really stunning. But interestingly, so you had shared Ethan Mollick's March 30th article, No Elephants, Breakthroughs in Image Generation When Language Models Learn to See and Create. And one of the things that talks about in just the overall technology is ChatGPT is no longer passing off the image generation to I think, I don't remember if it was Llama or to another tool. It's doing it internally. And that's the reason why suddenly like the text is great. It's not perfect. There's still, some messed up words, but the ones that I've seen, I could still tell, what it was doing. But a lot of them are perfect, like the one that I just shared that you had, or the Ghibli style, family picture or whatever. But those articles referenced a article by Scott Alexander called "The Colors of Her Coat," and then there's another one by Eric Cole called "The Semantic Apocalypse." And this gets like super super deep. And I don't know if you followed those, but like some people are saying basically we're breaking culture with this in the same way that the phonograph or the record player did for live music. You're just not going to be experiencing art and really culture. But this is the semantic apocalypse, this meaning apocalypse. So I don't know if you got that deep into it, but it was those were some of the more philosophically intense articles I've come across, when it comes to AI. But and the other thing about this is, and I admit this, okay, look, the tech bros who apparently are now running our government really do want almost an unlimited amount of investment for AI. And so they are promising all kinds of things. Like, hey, this is going to be like God and it's going to solve all problems. It's going to solve cancer. It's going to solve poverty. Everything's going to be solved. So, give us trillions of dollars. Um, when I share a picture like this, it's like, oh, wow. Of course, it feeds into this idea that, man, isn't this just amazing and incredible? But it is amazing and incredible. I mean, I can't tell you how stunning it is, especially with the info pics. And I really haven't done that much. I've done several and I've used them in class and used them in presentations, but like they're so good. I did one about Stuxnet because that was the cyber attack that I took and did as an example. There's no way that I would be creating an info pic at the quality that this one was, but I took my summary of the cyber attack and lessons learned and I don't know, something else, and it just made a phenomenal infographic about it. So I don't know how deep did you dive into those articles, and are you concerned about the semantic apocalypse?
I
There's
mean,
a light
well,
question. That's a light question for you.
yeah, well, here's my light answer. The I mean, I've seen, I've read a dozen articles, on the panic behind these tool sets, and it has to do with culture, but also livelihood and artistic expression. But for me, I think the problem I keep running into is that I cannot articulate where the line is, right? And so kind of follow me down a pathway for a second. If you go to a museum, right? And I love museums. It's a number one thing that I do with my wife when we travel. I'll never forget the first time when we were backpacking together 25 years ago this summer when we went to the Louvre, and it was kind of like the Louvre was my first major museum I ever went to in my life, which is a really strange museum to kind of break you into big museum culture. But one of the things I find fascinating about museums is there's always art students with their sketch pad and they're sitting cross-legged in front of a painting, or they have a little easel set up, or they're drawing, they're painting something, they're sketching something. And I've seen beautiful uh, uh, large format books, of the sketch notebooks of great artists. One of the things that I also think about a lot too is cooking, and a lot of chefs who are artists in their own right, will keep notebooks and write things down during other people's foods and dinners, or they'll sketch things in the farmers market, like, and then later on, those artists start to produce their own work, and if it resembles another artist, it's not a copying, it's an homage to that artist, or they were influenced by that artist. Um, and all the folks, that are strongly pushing back against AI because they feel it eliminates their intellectual property. Well, let's talk about your influences, right? Like, what were you influenced by? Are you paying a financial payment to the artists who you sketch their work, and almost certainly some of that made it in some way, shape, or form in your work. Um, I'm just trying to make a graphic, an infographic for a handout for my students. I'm not entirely sure what I'm competing with there when I'm doing that. Now, that's
Yeah, those kind of things don't, I'm convinced, take money away from the artist.
yeah, and that part for me is, I think, these are the critical questions that we're going to have to, start to figure out here pretty quick, because, I get this, and I'm carefully watching the lawsuits, but this whole notion of what these tools can do, and I have never seen. I mean, wow. I've been subscribing to Ideogram since I first found it, almost a year and a half ago. I still subscribe to it
Me too.
because it's an excellent, excellent tool. It's not quite as good as GPT-4, but it gives you more parameters to work with, so you can, get an exact size, and
It
it
also has different guardrails.
yeah, yeah, exactly, right? But yeah, stunning, stunning, stunning evolution of
and
this.
and so quick. Well, I definitely want to give you time to get to some of these other models that you put in here, but I will give a related copyright article, because this is from the Guardian on the 4th of April, and the headline is U.S. authors copyright lawsuits against OpenAI and Microsoft combined in New York with newspaper actions. And so they've basically, the Justice Department, I guess, has taken 12 U.S. copyright cases against OpenAI and Microsoft, and they put them all together. And the plaintiffs did not want this. They said, these are very different, they shouldn't be put together. But Department of Justice says, nah, it's a lot of similar stuff. And it's going to be so interesting to see what happens here, because the cynical view of the tech bros, and if you think we're in a techno fascist time, like, they would like us to just dispense with copyright. What are you talking about? Copyright, schmoppyright. I mean, let's ingest as much information as we can, scrape it from wherever we can, because, hey, we're competing with the Chinese, and this is an existential threat to the world, and we've got to win the AI race, and yada yada yada. So I think that we have a government in place at this point that is even more not only business friendly, but also AI tech bro friendly. So I would predict that the Department of Justice is not going to rule in favor of the New York Times and these other plaintiffs, that they're going to, give the AI companies kind of a green light. But anyway, that's a little status update. And again, I asked ChatGPT, because I'm asking it to use its search. Hey, any updates on the, New York Times Open AI? And it gave me a whole bunch of things, and then ended up getting that article. You got any predictions for that? Do you think the same sort of thing? Like, it's going to go
Yeah,
towards the AI companies, or do you think?
yeah, I do. I think where we might end up drawing a line is that, and I don't know where I heard this, but I've heard this from two different groups of folks in the last 7 days. But the line will be is what it can do to reproduce close to exact copies of training data, right? And
Kind of like with the New York Times, where they could
yeah,
get it to regurgitate an entire
right,
article verbatim. Like that's
right.
going to probably be a no-no.
Right, and I would also guess too, because as I recall from the initial lawsuit, they had to do some really acrobatic prompting to get it to do that. It wasn't like
That's right.
they weren't
Yes.
able to do it in even dozens of tries, and they eventually found a strategy. But as we know, from playing with these new models that are being released every third or fourth minute, is that they can do things to eliminate that ability in the background, right? And so my guess is that even if you were able to faithfully reproduce the strategy that the New York Times was utilizing to get it to quote verbatim, the bottom line is that it's probably not in existence in current versions of that model.
Yeah.
In the same way that and I don't know if I have this article here or not. We talked a little bit about DeepSeek earlier this year, the model from China that is still widely considered to be the best open source model, and the Perplexity pulled in DeepSeek and basically eliminated all the political about it and restored a more, a Western version of what happened in Tiananmen Square and other Chinese history issues, and then re-released DeepSeek minus the historical washing. So now that's
In
a
other words,
wrap.
there were training guardrails that the Chinese had imposed
Right,
that Perplexity was able to strip off.
right, yeah, and then
That's impressive.
yeah, and so now they have a version of DeepSeek that they've released also as open source that is the power of DeepSeek, but without the political ranklings. But the fact that I mean, if that just doesn't tell you the enormity of the issues ahead of us when we try to figure out ethical use of AI, that's going to nail it down. The fact that you can even add guardrails to it or nudge it in one direction or the other, based on the types of tweaking you do to eliminate historical events or even stop it from talking about this or that's a real wild. And I did have the opportunity to attend a session at ASU GSV with a Google engineer who was talking about one of the LLMs they're working on, which is actually from scratch built to pull in multiple models to help check answers to determine validity. And so it's Gemini and ChatGPT and Claude being used in some kind of succession to get better answers, but also create a method of internally double checking before you send the answer back to the end user, which is kind of what I do right now. And I do often have multiple models up at the same time when I'm kind of using them as thought partners. But wow, I think it's something really quite stunning.
As a teacher, if you're not using AI to help with some of your lesson planning, I think you're missing some not only opportunities to save some time and possibly bring some new resources in, but also an opportunity to really personally experience the advance of these technologies. Because as I'm doing these different queries, it is really, really stunning. I've been, for lesson plans, having it like today, find this week kid friendly podcasts, but then like videos and making recommendations of videos, advertisements, short advertisements we're talking about. This is weird. Like on that one, the first time I did it, all the links were broken. And then I said, please use the search and verify this. And then suddenly they all work. So it's like, this is ChatGPT. It defaults maybe to its own database, and then there's some hallucination. But then if I say, because I use that in my prompts a lot, use your search powers, and then do this. But it's just it's what else is kind of, is it things blown your mind? What kinds of things from the conference
Oh,
that you're at, and just like do a mind dump for us. What's
yeah, so much going on. Well, I would say that I'm still leaning much more aggressively towards the big model creators than I am the education startups that are trying to sell things specifically for schools.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm also quite realistic that I think that especially to start to build capacity in teachers to rely on these models as a teaching partner or a teacher friend, for critical feedback and all those pieces that I think these tools could do. The bottom line is that we're going to need both for a while, and I hope within 2 or 3 weeks to be able to make an announcement about a potential expansion of my program to start moving into the AI space. But one of the things that we're talking about very seriously is that, teachers need access, especially teacher leaders need access to both. Obviously, the school facing tools and education facing tools are fine, but you really do, as much as possible, need access to a ChatGPT and a Claude and a Gemini and a Copilot and the myriad of open source models of which I use quite frequently. Llama 3.3 from Meta is really a quite solid model, and it cost a 50th to run that on machines than it costs to run other frontier models. I will say that so far, Llama 4 is a bit disappointing. We'll see where that goes in the next couple of weeks. As Meta said, it takes a while for the new model to, I don't, click into place or something. Like this, all this sounds like
That's weird.
science fiction voodoo kind of stuff. But they said that it will take some time for the model to shine. I don't know what that means in context, but um, so we're thinking about how do we give edge teachers, the ones that are really pushing these tools, that really would benefit from having multiple models available. How do we get access that is safe and secure and is developed with those with security and privacy in mind, while understanding that most other teachers, especially until they become experts in their own, will defer to, the prominent folks in this space. So seeing that debate go back and forth is super interesting. One of the things that we are very aggressively investigating at Montana Digital Academy is a new series of tools that are referred to as authorship tools. They just mean that they are in some way monitoring the writing process to ensure that an LLM wasn't used. One of them in the space is called Cursive. Their founder is the former editor of Moodle News, and it's a very interesting platform that we're hoping at some point gets integrated into our LMS. But there are becoming 4 or 5 emerging leaders in this particular space too. So having those conversations has been interesting. And then I did get a chance to talk to some folks from well-known name brand educational foundations, and I was very encouraged by the work that they're doing in trying to both nudge the market in regards to EdTech tools that are embracing AI, but also put resources into experiments and communicating results of schools that are stepping early into the space.
Have you run into Flint AI and
Um,
visited with them?
I have. It's actually one of the tools that we have received or that actually we've scheduled a demo for. But I know a couple state virtual schools that went in the direction of Flint AI and absolutely
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, I mean, they don't do any training data, and getting with, allowing middle schoolers younger than 13, to be able to do this with permission. I guess you can probably do that through parent permission, and depending on how all your, forms are signed at the beginning of the year. But being able to have that documentation of the conversation, I could talk about this a lot, just because as far as the student utilization of it. But yeah, I think that's, if we didn't license that as a school, I don't think that my middle schoolers would be using AI at all, because I can't ask them. I'm not asking them. Either most of them are under 13. There's a few that are not, but I have a lot of 6th and 7th graders. So any other tools that are similar to that are up for students, and then they're like letting the teacher create activities, and then they're tracking the entire thing. One of the challenges that our only child who's still in school is facing is that for professors that are allowing AI use, some of them are requiring verbatim extensive documentation of the conversation, so that if they want to go in and see exactly what was done and prompted and stuff like that, they've got that whole record.
Yeah, I saw a demo today. I had previously, a couple years back, met with the CEO of Scribble, Scrible, just one B in Scribble, and then it was more or less a writing process tool. But they haven't quite pivoted. They've added a lot of functionality in the AI space. But what I like about it is that it's all student interaction is very, 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 very cataloged, so teachers can go back and witness the whole process as it plays out. And
Yeah.
so that's another tool we'll keep an eye on. Grammarly is moving very hard into, they have provided a tool set of AI generation tools that plug right into your operating system or your browser or your platform for writing, Google Docs, Word Online, etc. And they're now also offering plugins for browsers that monitor the authoring process to help verify authorship as one of their plays as well. And so I expect there to be a lot more in that space. And one thing that I did think was interesting, I heard it actually. I've been doing a lot of AI and STEM stuff in the last week at multiple events in and out of the state of Montana. But 7 times over, I heard from people with vastly different points of view in artificial intelligence that you should not rely on the detectors, that it's becoming harder, not easier. And I will also tell you that in my experimentations the last couple of weeks, whenever it gets to a point where my personal chat GPT offers to write a blog post for me, and I let it do it, it's not that hard to scrub that text to make it ambivalent or ambiguous to the AI detectors. I it is interesting that hasn't gone all that further, and also few of those vendors were hanging out at ASU GSV, if I understand correctly. But also I saw a lot of coverage pre-conference about that some people feel that it's a little too balanced on a rosy view of AI, and I won't pick that fight. I honestly couldn't tell you where even I'm at right now on safety.
I bet you all have had some good conversations about this pedagogy, because one of the things, and I'm trying to decide at this point how I am going to let my students use AI to write these scripts. But the tendency is to use it as an AI cheating tool, not a thinking tool,
Yeah.
and let it do the work. And so figuring out how to guide students so that, for instance, they're taking the first stab at the writing. That cursive technology does look really interesting, because it
It
sort of
does.
reminds me of like the Chrome extension that'll replay your whole Google Doc, right? Which actually, that's something I think that still works, that exists, that you could do. So if you tell the students, look, I want you to open a new Google Doc and do 100% of your work in it. You can see if a whole block of text or something like that gets copied and pasted in there. But I don't know. I think those are important things to wrestle with, and I'd love opportunities to visit with more teachers about that too, because in my perception, there's not a lot of teachers that are really embracing it. Most are just saying, no, you can't use it, and we're going on. But for those that are, I'd be really interested to know how they're navigating the tendency to have it sort of do the thinking and do the work instead of um, the info pick, or the infographic today, though, was pretty awesome. We were doing very simple 3-slide presentations. The middle slide was a 30 to 60-second video clip about the cyber attack. The first one was just like name, date, attacker, what was the type of attack, who was the victim. But then the last was the summary and the impacts and the lessons learned. And that was the one that people were making the info pick about. So I don't know, maybe because that's the idea of taking your writing, or your ideas, and then putting it in. But do you have any good silver bullets for me that'll solve all my dilemmas?
I have no silver bullets for you, Dr. Fryer. In fact, if anything, I'm bewildered about, I mean, I feel like the conversations has changed in the last 2 weeks, let alone what has happened in the last few years in regards to just the challenge of trying to figure out instructional models in an AI world.
And it's also so interesting to be using this as a professional, right? And realizing, of course, I'm using this. Of course, I'm going to. I mean, I'm writing a lesson. Why would I not, ask it for ideas, resources, knowing how powerful it is. Was anything said about vibe coding? About being able
Oh,
to.
oh yeah, a lot. There was both. There's two conferences here. The show is the big free, everyone invited at the San Diego Convention Center, and then the summit is the more industry focused one. And there was a lot of interesting conversations about vibe coding over at the summit. I'm sorry, at the show, because a lot of teachers were using it with their kids.
Yeah, right. Wow. Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to see. What people are doing and how far they're taking it, and there's a whole bunch of ideas rattling around in my head too, because I have just been amazed with the powers that it does put at our fingertips.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about any of these other models or some of these other
Yeah,
articles?
I'd like to talk about Notebook LM for a couple of minutes. Notebook LM continues to become an truly extraordinary tool for learning. Teaching is it. I think it provides really great things to teachers, but the learning piece is really huge. So first and foremost, Google itself has released a ton of new interesting features in the last couple of weeks. They are putting additional tools in for those that have Gemini Pro in Meets. It now has an instant note-taking feature, and also creates a suggested next steps as part of your transcript. That's really cool. That is available for some of the advanced paid for pieces in Google Meets, not the free education piece, or I think even a free personal account doesn't get it either. It's just a paid for version. I imagine that there are a lot of schools that are paying for the advanced education versions that have these tool sets in there right now. I wouldn't want to mention one thing because it's I've seen this discussion ongoing, and we really need to be super conscious about it. But don't secretly record your meetings, Nixon, when you are in a Google Meet or elsewhere, because you may be, or someone else may be, in a state that requires all parties to consent before recording. And Montana is a good example of this. They're a two consent, or there are all parties consent. Um, uh, um,
Recording.
Thank you. And so, if you and a lot of these, emerging AI meeting tools are, I mean, they're super cool. The functionality is quite extraordinary. But if you use one of the free ones, one of the things that I know at least two of the tools do is that it gets access to your calendar and just starts inviting itself to all your meetings.
Is that
And
Otter AI that does that?
no, Firefly AI does that. Otter may do that actually. And there's one other that I'm not recalling the name of, and you can turn it off, but the default setting is to send you all meetings. And so I have heard a couple of secondhand stories of someone's AI bot that invited itself to like a meet for an IEP. And then not only recorded the meeting, but sent a full transcript to everyone who was in the invite afterwards. And that freaks people out, as it turns out. And sometimes people sign up with their personal Gmail accounts and then attach it to their work Gmail account, and so it's going to your personal account. Be really, really cautious about that. But I think it's a super cool functionality, and for an organization that we do a lot of collaborating on our team, and often have meetings, it can be really an extraordinary workflow to add those tools. But yeah, now built directly into Meets. And then specific to Notebook LM, it keeps releasing new interesting features. The most interesting one to me recently is they have a mind map feature now. And I have to be really um, thoughtful about the way I talk about this because I read a really interesting LinkedIn post last week where someone made the claim that, and I wish I need to go look up this gentleman's name because he was absolutely right, that, a lot of people said, oh, what a great tool for students. Well, no, actually, that the point he made was that if the point is to process the materials, and you're learning that process, having some bot make a mind map for you does nothing to help you in regards to learning those materials, in most learning situations, right? But I know personally, and I use Notebook LM for so many important strategies in my information lifestyle. God, am I that much of an influencer wannabe that I just use that term? But in my kind of information heavy job, one example of this is that I don't have time to watch 25 what's new in AI this week videos. There are 2 or 3 creators that I will make a priority to watch once a week, but every time I see a video that talks about new release that, or 8 ways to use it this way, or 30 things to know about this model, or this is a new way to generate images, I don't watch that video. I just stick it in Notebook LM, because you can just put YouTube videos on there. And I have a Notebook LM now with about 80 different YouTube videos on it. And the mind map feature is extraordinary because it looks at all 80 of those transcripts and then divides up the content into almost an outline like form. So if I want to find out the latest information on Gemini, for example, then I can just click on it creates a mind map. I click on Gemini, or it might say models and then Gemini, and I can get as deep as I want to. And once I find the topic that I would like to know more about, I just click on the little bubble on the mind map, and then it crafts a prompt for me to pull the information out of those YouTube transcripts, right? And so, if you have a specialized hobby or a specialized thing you do inside of a classroom and you collected a bunch of YouTube videos just to be an advisor to you on that topic, then that's, I think, a wonderful way, truly wonderful way, to take a huge hoard of information and turn it to something, quite useful. So Notebook continues to be, by a serious margin, my favorite AI tool.
Well, Google did announce, and I think I put this one down under Google. Yeah, this is The Verge today. Gemini can now turn your Google Docs into podcasts,
Yep.
and they're rolling that into. It's not available for everybody yet, but it's just a tool that is very Notebook LM like. I have been using Notebook LM with my high school students. I have a student who recently had a concussion and is not able to look at a screen much at all. And so taking study guides that I've created, and other documents, transcripts of videos, and then having it go ahead and create some study guide materials that present it in an audio format has been good and well received. So our daughter actually, our middle daughter takes the LSAT for law school again tomorrow, and one of the things, and we had them home, both girls, for a while here this past month, and I want to show her some of these tools because I think when you're wanting to ingest information, yes, we've got to be careful about hallucination, and can't rely on it at all. And then if you're involved in litigation or whatever, or just the rules, right? What are the rules of engagement that the professor or the instructor is putting on you, and then your institution and the different restrictions. But being in a more autonomous situation as far as a classroom teacher, there is so much power in figuring out how to create different remixes and representations of information and ways that students can access that as well. So pretty wild. What is this? I saw you got some different models that are down here.
Yeah, let me talk about all these quick. Like the first and foremost, there is I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm going to say Reve maybe.
Yeah.
Is a new image generation model that I believe is open source, but they're just releasing version 1.0 of it now. And right now you can go onto their website and sign up for an account and get free image generation. I wouldn't say it's quite as good as Ideogram 3, which was just released last week, and not as good as the ChatGPT 4.0 image generator. But the fact that there's just another a generator in the space, I think, is really great. And my early use of it suggested it's a pretty darn effective model. I did see some articles about the effectiveness of the model, and I think there's some benchmarks that image generators use. The benchmarks still seem a little woo woo to me, but and not necessarily an accurate. Description of the functionality of a tool, but really pretty amazing stuff. Other stuff released in the last couple weeks. Google has released two tools. One of them is the 2.5 Gemini model, which is now available on all free accounts and also pro accounts by most accounts, including user based choice benchmarks. It seems to be a top 5 model now. Google seems to have caught up largely with the other large language models, and they keep adding subtle evolutions to Gemini, the tool set, which I think is super great. Their GEMS functionality is kind of like a custom GPT. They also do a deep research model that has actually become a pretty critical part of my workflow. This is also available for free in a free school or otherwise account, but you can create, I call them dossiers, but in the same way that a CEO doesn't go do a Google search, they have someone prepare a briefing for them. You can just ask Gemini to complete a briefing for you on a particular topic, and it takes anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes. They research sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds of sources. The other day, I had it help create a guide for me on how to write SMART goals. I had an old guide that I didn't know what was where it came from. I don't know if it was copyrighted, and I was using it for a very specific purpose. And so I had it research a comprehensive guide to writing SMART goals, and then I used Gemini when I was done with that. It created a 14-page report with everything cited. It was really quite excellent. And then I just used Gemini to cut that down into more actionable information before I then wrote my final instructions for the exercise I was working on. And deep research is another great piece of functionality that I would recommend that you play with. And there's also
Have you played with the Gmail one that Gmail sort?
I've not, in part because I don't know if it's implemented in my account or not.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about that one. That's I do think AI has just extraordinary potential in helping us manage email.
Oh, I need that so bad.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of new models. The weeks are getting extra filled. It seems like with all these huge announcements. But a lot of really great and evolving tools.
All right. Well, let me hit just a couple more, and then we probably should geek of the week it. Let's see. I put several in here about free speech and media censorship that are pretty significant. Ars Technica had an article today. Take It Down Act nears passage. Critics warn Trump could use it against enemies. It is an anti-deep fake bill. So it's been a while, but we've talked about deep fakes and AI's potential to do all sorts of terrible things. And this is a bipartisan bill that would basically make it illegal. Well, it would require platforms within 48 hours to take that content down, but it potentially could be used to do a lot more than that. And so EFF and a whole host of other organizations, I have a link there to the critical letter by about 10 different organizations, have concerns about the ways that it's written. So I don't know. We talk about the need for regulation, and then when it's proposed, it appears it's not going to be great. This is a real interesting article from a couple days ago on April 7th from Ars Technica. The speech police chairman Brendan Carr and the FCC's news distortion policy. And so this is a case where the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, is wanting to use a really old policy called the distortion policy. It was developed in the 60s, but it hasn't been used in a real long time, and potentially revoke the broadcast license of maybe CBS and be used against other news agencies that publish opinions about individuals in government or government policies that the government disagrees with. And this whole realm of talking about free speech and what free speech is, and trying to discern, well, wait a second, you're a free speech advocate, but what does that exactly mean? So anyway, we could go on, but it is, we've been out of this for almost 2 months. So obviously there's a lot to talk about. Anything else you'd like to hit before we Geek of the Week it?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, my Geek of the Week, I went home. I guess I am home in North Carolina, but I went to my childhood home over spring break to drive 2,200 miles round trip. It was a lot of driving, but my dad had asked me to do a couple presentations about AI at his retirement community. So I did one called AI Magic Tricks, and then he has a discussion group, and we tackled why regulate AI. So that is the link to the slideshow, and I actually recorded the audio for that presentation, and I think that was valuable, because I think that's an important conversation to have. Many folks that are in Silicon Valley don't want us to be doing any regulation. Then the other thing is I'm continuing to facilitate a webinar for the Media Education Lab at the start of each month, and we did that this past Monday, and it was called Fact Checking Previously Invisible History, and this is called the Remembrance Project in Charlotte, and it's about racial terror lynchings, and it's part of the Equal Justice Initiative out of Alabama, and very fascinating in terms of the ways in which the journalists and others involved fact-checked the history, and utilizing there's a whole racial healing element to this. This is obviously sensitive history, and in some cases history that folks may not want us to talk about, but we had a panel of both a website lead and the one of the lead journalists that were responsible for the project. And they just released this website a few months ago, and they're putting memorial markers here in our area. And so anyway, that's there are media literacy connections to that. And I may be partnering with some different groups to do some workshops in the summer around that. And those are my Geeks of the Week. How about you?
Well, I want to share a previously shared one that I think is really kind of amazing. It's a bit of a technical rabbit hole, but it's OpenRouter. And OpenRouter is a multiple AI LLM provider that provides many different models for kind of renting via their platform. And I've been using their service for months and months and months and months now, and I still haven't used my $15 in credit that I purchased. I still have $2.86 left, and I have now 10 people hammering on this account and plugged into all sorts of third-party tools, like my favorite tool, which is Misty, is the desktop app that I use to pull in API providers. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is that a lot of what they offer is actually free. You can get access to all sorts of third-party models, either chatting on their website or with one of the desktop apps that we've talked about, a couple of them in the past. But I was just looking to see what they have available for free, and it's the free tier of things. It's slower. There's a rate limit on a number of these tools, but right now, it just so happens that OpenRouter offers dozens of these tools at no cost, again with some rate limiting. But Gemini 2.5 Pro free, DeepSeek V3, DeepSeek R1, Gemini 2.0. Here's all the Quen models. There is some of the NVIDIA models and the Llama models, and most of these are open source that are provided just for experimentation purposes. And I would with none of free anything would I ever put even a little piece of PII into it. But if you really want to experiment with models, this is a really great way to do it at no cost. And again, you can go to openrouter.ai and sign up and just show me the free models, and we'll allow you to chat with it to your heart's content. Or you can give it $5 in credit. And there are easy ways to blow $5 in about 3 minutes if you want to. But if you're thoughtful about it, you can get access to lots of different models that you can either use on their website or plug into one of the desktop apps. So that's openrouter.ai. And Wes is smiling and nodding.
It's going to be interesting. I don't know if I'll do AP Computer Science Principles again next year, but the pace of change with this and grappling with what is it that we need to try and equip students with and give them a chance to try and play with. And it makes my head spin. So, wow. Thank you for giving me new tools that can let me get less sleep at night.
Yeah, totally. And and I would also say, I mean, Wes and I, we're certainly varsity level teacher nerds, right? For absolute sure on the tech side of it, but we're not keeping up with this either. So, continue to have the discussions that you need to have with your colleagues and your administrators and your staff and your students about AI, but also understand that this is just happening at such a phenomenal rate that if you feel like you're behind, you probably are, and to be honest, that's quite all right.
Yeah, it's normal. All right. Well,
hey, Dr. Fryer, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, you can go to westfryer.com and find me there. I also happen to have started a Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/westfryer. And that's Dangerous Ideas, Human Rights, Democratic Norms, Tolerance, and Media Literacy. But I do have 111 posts there now. So,
oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah. How about you? Are you still the AI centrist with an updated website?
Yeah, aicentrist.com with an actual website that's got stuff on it. So feel free to see me there. But hey, this is the EdTech Situation Room. We're a once a week podcast that broadcasts on Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. West Coast time, although I will not be on the West Coast next week, and we'd love for you to stop by live if that's something you do. Otherwise, you can find us on YouTube or wherever finer the podcasts are aggregated.
And thanks to our live viewers. I don't think we had anybody say hi, but I suspect one of them is my dad. I'm not sure who our other one is. I've got a suspicion, but thank you for joining us live, and feel free if you do to jump into the chat.
Yep. So you have stay safe, stay savvy, and we'll see you next time on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night.
Good night.